aquatic invasive species are one of the biggest threats facing our freshwater resources, both ecologically and environmentally. So it's no surprise that this was one of the topics that was very much sought after when we asked for what your priority issues were. So I'm going to give a little bit of background on aquatic invasive species, and then, but I'll go through that fairly quickly because I know Kate's been doing a lot of talks, so this is probably for a lot of you not the first time you've heard this presentation. But there's a few updates in terms of our 5-limbed program at ESRD. So I'll focus more on those updates and giving you kind of information on where we're at and where we're going. Okay, so what are aquatic invasive species? So there's no Alberta definition yet, but the kind of universal definition is that they pose a significant risk to the economy, environment, and/or human health. So they're not native. They can be animal, plant, or pathogen, and there's no effective natural or native predators in the ecosystem in question. So there's several examples. I won't get into them. Aside from mussels, we have the Asian carp, we have Eurasian water milfoil, the goby, you have the didymo or the rock snot. Okay, so how do they get here? Typically, the source of initial introduction is in the ballast of large ships. That's why we saw most of the aquatic invasives in the Great Lakes initially. They can also happen through aquarium dumping or intentional release or cultural release. And then once they're established here, they spread secondarily through, mostly through boats. So boats traveling across the country. And I have a map. Yeah, this map shows you just how far boat traffic goes. So this is a map of aquatic invasive species intercepted in Idaho. All these dots show the origin of those boats. So as you can see, all of these dots represent the starting place of a boat that at one time or another made its way through Idaho. So this touches on every US state and every Canadian province. So boats travel far is the key message here. So the focus of the talk today is going to be on invasive mussels, and I've brought a little sample. This was from Lake Mead. So they put a CD, like just a compact disc, down into the lake for about 6 months, and that's how long it took for the mussels to completely take over. So as you can see, they grow really fast, and they grow in very dense numbers. So I'll just pass this around. If you can just be very careful and not to drop it, it's actually pretty fragile. So these guys can live for up to 30 days out of water. They're filter feeders, and they eat very voraciously. So they filter up to 1 liter per day, and they remove the phytoplankton, zooplankton, and algae from the water that other native species need. So what we would see, well, I'll get into the impacts in a minute. So there's no feasible control options. Our best strategy is prevention. Once they're established here, there's really nothing that we can do that wouldn't significantly harm the other species in the lake ecosystem that we can do to control them. So prevention is number one. They do have a free-floating microscopic larval form. They're called veligers, and they can live for quite a long time in standing water. And like they're microscopic, they're really hard to see. And this is why when we get into the Clean Drain Dry campaign, it's so important for boats that are traveling to make sure that their ballast water is all cleared out, that there's no standing water, because those veligers can hang on and then infect other lakes. Another important point to remember is that if you ever see an attached mussel in North America, it's not native. So there's no attached mussel species that are native to North America. So if you see one in Alberta, you know it's invasive. Okay, so what are we talking in terms of damage? So here's a report that was done by Anish Nipani at ESRD that looks at the estimated annual cost of an Alberta invasive mussel infestation. So every year, if they were to become established here, we're looking at $75 million. Okay, so this is everything from power generation, drinking water systems, boat maintenance, recreational fishing, property value. So it all adds up to be quite a very significant loss, which is why, again, prevention is key. Environmental impact. So as I said, they filter out enormous amounts of plankton. They have stand to impact the entire food web. We would start to see smaller and fewer fish, of course, because those fish rely on the plankton in the water that the mussels eat in large quantities. We would never recommend anyone to eat the mussels, compost them, feed them to animals, because they can accumulate toxins in their tissues. So if you think, well, maybe we can use them for something, that's not really an option either. Some people might think, oh, they filter out algae? Great, we have blue-green algae problems in some of our lakes. So it's actually been found that they make things worse because they selectively filter out the good algae and aren't eating the blue-green algae. So they've been linked to higher incidences of blue-green algal blooms. So again, not a solution. There's also been cases, headlines at the Great Lakes, where there have been massive die-offs of waterfowl linked to these mussels for spreading avian botulism. And again, as I said, they outcompete native species. So here's your lake without mussels, and here's your lake on mussels. Bad news. So here's kind of the history, the story of how they became established here. So in 1988, they were first found in the Great Lakes. By 2000, most of the East and Midwest was infested with mussels. By 2007, they crossed the 100th meridian and were first found in Lake Mead. There's Lake Mead. And by 2009, they were found in Lake Havasu and Lake Pleasant. And an important thing to note is that this circle here, this area of the Colorado River, is kind of a hot spot for snowbirds, especially snowbirds traveling south from Alberta. And then in October 2013, zebra mussels were first found in Lake Winnipeg at 5 sites along the southern portion of the lake. And we don't have any data on boat travel from east to west. So while this maybe paints kind of a sad and gloomy picture, the good news is that, see, there's a happy silver lining. The good news is that the 5 states below us have implemented mandatory boat inspection, and it seems to be working. So they intercept, they're kind of our buffer for like the boats that are coming north from this area here. They've intercepted them for us. So that's a positive prospect, at least, that mandatory inspection is working. Well, mussels like it here. So this map, I won't get into too much detail. This map shows the lakes of high risk. So all those red dots are high risk based on calcium data, because the mussels need calcium in the water to grow their shells. And so this assessment shows that, yes, they will like it here. Okay, so DFO agrees with their research, they'll like it here. Okay, so these are the mussel-fouled boats that were found last year, intercepted by one of those 5 states, and this is where they were going. So most of these from 2013 were snowbirds, but a couple of them were also, as I mentioned, just people traveling south to go and buy boats and bring them back. And then the one that was just a month ago, like I mentioned, had gone down to Phoenix to buy some old used boat and bring it back, and it was mussel-fouled. So that was intercepted. Okay, so enter our new AIS Prevention Program. So Kate is doing a great job of leading the charge in this strategy that's based on the Crown Management Plan program. There were 400 inspections last summer, monitoring of 55 water bodies province-wide, the establishment of a hotline, and lots of amazing partnerships. So we're working on scaling this up to a provincial level and really getting some great momentum happening. So there's 5 elements: response, policy and legislation, education and outreach, monitoring and inspection. And so I'll just get into a little bit of detail here on each one. So as I mentioned, the hotline was established last year, so everyone should have this in their speed dial. Spread the word far and wide about this. Anyone who suspects or that we may have a positive hit should call this number. And it'll go to a call center that can dispatch a fisheries officer if needed, if it's an emergency, or put the call to Kate where she can answer it as soon as she can. So that's really a positive step in terms of response. The response team is also working on a plan, a rapid response plan that will entail a decontamination protocol for mussel-fouled boats and what to do if we actually find them here. Okay, so education and outreach. This is the team that I'm on, and I think Erin's on it as well. So right now we're really focusing on getting the message clear of the behavior that we need people to do in order to achieve prevention. So we're really focusing on this clean, drain, dry message. We'll be addressing a number of key target audiences, including boaters, anglers, and then down the road, aquarium and pet stores, and looking at the cultural release issue. But right now, for this summer, it's really targeting boaters. We're coming up with various educational products and materials based on a logic model we've developed, so we can tailor those materials to meet the specific outcomes and the needs of the target audiences we've identified. We're working on getting an updated website happening, and a municipal and stewardship group toolkit, which I'm really excited about. Something that we can give to groups like yours, and they can just fan out resources and materials and be equipped to spread the word locally. Because provincially it doesn't make sense. Our reach is so much more limited than if we work with local municipalities and stewardship groups. Okay, so this is the new sign that we've produced. There's going to be 700 distributed to boat launches throughout the province this summer. We're just trying to wrap our heads around the best way to actually distribute them and get them put up at the boat launches. Which boat launches? We need the GPS coordinates. We need to have a plan for maintaining the signs. All kinds of details that need to fall into place. But at least we have a great sign. Monitoring, I won't talk about monitoring because I think, Erin, you're going to touch on this in your presentation. So I'll let her cover that. The watercraft inspection stations. So we've got 4, like I said, voluntary stations set up. There's one at Vermilion, Highway 16 outside of Lloydminster, one at Dunmore, outside Medicine Hat, one at Coots, which is like 1 kilometer away from the border, and then one at Crow's Nest Pass, so Highway 3. And we're piloting the use of weigh stations, so commercial vehicle weigh stations. We've staffed up. We've got 15 summer staff that are going to be manning these and womaning these. So signage will direct people to these inspection stations. And we hope that by getting some of the other educational campaigns out there, awareness will be raised and people will take the time to go and get inspected because they understand the impacts that these things could have. Okay, so a little bit on the legislation. This is the current legislation that we have, the Alberta Weed Control Act. We have all of these currently in Alberta except for Eurasian water milfoil that we know of. Under the Fisheries Act, Section 42, it's restricted to possess zebra mussels and sea lamprey. Last summer, under Section 32, we were able to get a ministerial order in place under ecological threats to fish health, which meant that fisheries officers were granted authority to stop, inspect, and quarantine boats if they find zebra mussels. So that was a very positive step where before they didn't have that power. And then we also had quagga mussels added alongside zebra mussels.